Today our video is going to feature Blum's 170 degree hinge. The reason a person buys a 170 degree hinge is because he wants his door to open up 170 degrees. And so in this video we're going to examine and see what we can accomplish getting the 170 degree angle of opening and how thick can we go with the door and still achieve that. The doors on this cabinet, the hinge cup, the holes for the hinge cup are drilled 5 millimeters from the edge of the door to the edge of the hole. It has a 5 millimeter boring distance. And we're using the straight arm hinge, and we'll also use the partial overlay hinge on your cabinet. So let's get started on this and take a look at some applications. In order to do that, I'm going to take these two cabinets and put them together side by side, lay them on their back so you can observe how the hinges operate under with various thicknesses of doors. The rubber band keeps everything together for the demo. Here's my cabinets. They're laying on their back, so you'll be able to see how they function and how it works as far as the swing of the hinge. Now here you see at the end of a run, here's a 170 degree opening. So I'm going to zoom this in so you can get a closer look at the function of the door. What we're looking at here is a 3/4 inch door and the straight arm Blum 170 degree hinge. And you can see that the door has no problem opening up the full 170 degree. And that's what you want. But 3/4 of an inch is not really a thick door. So how does this 170 degree hinge from Blum function if your door is 7/8 of an inch thick? Will it open up the full 170 degrees without hitting the next door? Well, it's not going to work. A 7/8 inch thick door with the Blum 170 degree hinge is what Blum would call a special application. And so they recommend trial applications. And so we're going to use one of these handy shims, the blue one. That one's 1/4 inch thick precisely. And I'll stack those between the two cabinets until we get the cabinets far enough apart so we can get the 7/8 inch thick door to open successfully. I started with 2 shims, and that didn't work. So then I went to 3, still couldn't get the doors to open without hitting each other. Then I went to 4, didn't work either. And finally, at long last, I got 5 of those shims to work, and the doors did not hit. I got a full 1/8 of an inch clearance when I opened the doors. 5 shims, 1.25 inches. So I went to work and built a filler to go between the two cabinets that's 1.25 inches thick. So now you can see the gears turning on my be-whiskered face. I've got an 1.25 inch filler, that's 32 millimeters, and a reveal of 3 millimeters on each door, 6. So now I got 38 millimeters between the two doors on the hinge side. So if you want a 7/8 inch door to open 170 degrees, then you have to have a minimum of 38 millimeters or 1.5 inches between the doors. Now what I'm going to do is take Blum's overlay hinge, the straight arm hinge, and I'm going to replace it with what they call the partial overlay or the half crank hinge. And we'll see what we need between, how much space we need between the doors to make it function at 170 degrees. So let's switch out the hinges. This is going to be a pretty easy switch to make. I'll just pull out the straight arm hinges and replace them with the half crank hinge and then clip them onto the cabinet. Now the difference here is going to be that the straight arm hinge gave me a 3 millimeter reveal, and these half crank hinges are going to give me a 12.5 millimeter reveal per door. So I'm going to have 1 inch space between the two doors. I don't think it's going to work. So I'm going to stick in these 2 1/4 inch shims. So now I'll have an inch and a half, just like I had on the straight arm hinge. And let's hope that this is going to work with these two spacers. That'll be an inch and a half or 38 millimeters of space between those two doors on the hinge side. And so we're going to watch her close now and see, does it hit? No, it did not hit. So it worked. I've got 1/8 of an inch clearance. You see it by that white handy shim. And so that's a good clearance on the doors with the half cranked hinge. And you'll get a full 170-degree opening, and that's just perfect. I can make a filler and stick it in there. What's our takeaway from this video? If you're using door thicknesses up to 3/4 of an inch, you don't have to worry about your gap between your doors. You're going to get the full 170-degree swing of the hinge, and the doors are not going to bump. But when you go over 3/4 of an inch, now there's some concern. You're going to, if this one is, for example, is 7/8 of an inch thick, and it required an inch and a half space between the hinge sides of the door. That's 38 millimeters. That was the minimum I could get by with. And the space in between the doors is not a concern either. That can be 1 millimeter. So with the straight arm hinge and with the half cranked hinge, if you want to achieve a 170-degree opening, then you have to have a minimum of 38 millimeters between the hinge sides of the door. Well, I hope this video was of use to you. And if it was, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe.